Chengdu, with more than 20 million residents, is a megacity where ancient traditions and modern life converge. Several dozen kilometers from its bustling downtown lies the small county called Guanghan. Last century, an archaeological discovery here astonished the world. The awe inspired by Sanxingdui was like that of 19th century archaeologists, right when they came to Egypt and saw the pyramids for the first time. It echoed the wonder sparked by Machu Picchu in the early 20th century. The world was amazed by the mystery and grandeur created by the ancients. Sanxingdui ruins site was deemed one of the greatest 20th century archaeological discoveries. Sanxingdui, an ancient city, reawakened after 3,000 years and amazed the world. On August 24, 2022, sacrificial pit number 8 of Sanxingdui in Guanghan, Sichuan, fixed countless eyes, online and on-site, on the excavation. A colossal artifact was making its first appearance in millennia. About 1 meter high and weighing about 150 kilograms, it was named the large human and beast figure. In terms of size, it is the largest and most imposing animal-shaped bronze unearthed at Sanxingdui. It has a big mouth, a narrow waist, long ears, patterned limbs, a human figure atop, and a sacred tree on its chest. More remarkably still, a lifelike miniature human figure is hidden inside a niche at its base. Sanxingdui's masterful bronze craftsmanship from millennia ago astonished the whole world.
What makes Sanxingdui civilization the most extraordinary is its bronze sculptures. The technology responsible for making them was exactly the same, the technology making bronze vessels in the Central Plain. The particular technology called clay piece mold casting technology was invented in the central part of China along the Yellow River region in the north.
I don't think we're looking at something developed over 500 years. We're looking at something that took place in a relatively limited time because the style or the imagery is quite consistent. What is interesting is it takes something developed elsewhere and turns it into its own extraordinary production.
The discovery of bronze artifacts at Sanxingdui quickly attracted attention from scholars in China and abroad. The immense quantity and diversity of these artifacts reveal a cultural landscape distinctly different from those of contemporary civilizations. Many were previously unseen, as if treasures hidden for millennia had suddenly stepped into the spotlight and shone gloriously. Among those artifacts, the over 3-meter-tall bronze sacred tree stands out. Its twisting branches are adorned with intricate designs that seem to narrate ancient myths. 9 lifelike sun birds perch upon it in different forms. It truly inspires awe at the craftsman's superb skills and boundless imagination. From masks, large and small, to peculiar tsuan and lei vessels, every artifact shows amazing craftsmanship. 3 millennia ago, how were such sophisticated bronze artifacts produced? In June 2022, a uniquely shaped and highly complex bronze altar was lifted from pit number 8 at Sanxingdui. The altar is structurally complex and refined. Its openwork base houses 13 kneeling figures, arranged in 4 groups. They differ in style. Faces outward, their hands are gripping, with different hairstyles and attire. For small bronze figures kneeling on pillars, jointly support a mythical creature. Experts found another kneeling figure between the creatures, neck and tail, though it is broken at the waist. Based on its surviving structure, the altar should originally have stood about 1.5 meters high. It may depict an ancient Shu vision of human-deity interaction. Sanxingdui Museum restorers, Guohanzhong and Guojianbo, used X-ray equipment to scan the altar. They try to examine the altar's internal structure. They aim to unlock the secrets of ancient Shu bronze casting techniques.
The altar shows careful design in how its rods connect to the figure's hands before they made the mold, or after they cast the altar. The craftsman had made a precise design. That's why the fit is so precise. This figure was cast in 3 separate sections: the head, hands, and body. After separate casting, the 3 sections were joined using molten bronze. We can still see very obvious seams here. This piece was made using sectional casting, where individual components are cast separately and then bronze welded together into one piece. It's a classic hallmark of Sanxingdui's bronze casting craftsmanship.
The ancient Shu people used bronze to shape magical visions. Bronze artifacts of every size and form show the brilliance of the Sanxingdui civilization. They embody the most advanced craftsmanship of their age. Jie Shi, a Chinese-American scholar and former Asian Art Museum director, and contemporary bronze master Zhu Bingren, explored the secret techniques together.
This is the largest piece from pit number 3.
Look, this seems to be a cutting trace.
Such cutting would be very difficult with the tools available then.
Yeah.
Tough. It might also have a hole used for support.
Right. This was patched. The sprue's still here, and this patch.
The mold was made exceptionally well.
The front section was cast as a unit. It was a separate section, while the face was another. There are 4 square holes in the face. During assembly, the large ears were aligned with those holes, and molten bronze was poured in from the back, creating a flat casting gate to lock them firmly in place. We can see for here, these 4 marks are visible joints left after assembly.
Shi and Zhu concluded that Sanxingdui craftsmen cast components separately before assembling them. The giant bronze mask was made in this way. Some Sanxingdui bronzes display extraordinary precision. How did ancient craftsmen cast flawless bronze parts, only 2 millimeters thick? Seeking answers, Shi and Zhu visited Dong Zijuan, a master in traditional bronze casting.
First, add the copper, then heat it until it's hot enough to melt copper. Heat it. Once it reaches the right temperature, we add phosphor copper. Once the copper melts, It's ready for casting. Add more copper to cool it down. 1083 degrees Celsius, you see. But I usually cast at around 930 to 960 degrees Celsius.
Traditional bronze casting has 2 steps: preparing a copper tin lead alloy and casting it into clay molds. The alloy ratio is critical to success. Equally important is the precision of the clay molds. The slightest error could affect the final result. It is a highly demanding art.
One question: since molten bronze doesn't flow well, how do you try to avoid incomplete casting or gaps caused when the metal stops flowing? Could that kind of problem come up?
You have to design vents so the air can go out. Also the gates. You need to plan a few.
Right.
Use fewer, but you still have to make sure the metal can flow smoothly once it's poured. Control the heat. When the heat is right, the bronze flows better.
I see.
Then the casting should be complete.
Right.
With proper venting, air won't get trapped inside. That greatly improves the success rate.
No clay molds were found at Sanxingdui, but the reconstructed experience from the Central Plains offers clues to reproduce the ancient Shu bronze casting skills.
There it is.
Great.
Mold casting usually began by shaping a clay negative mold. Normally, multiple clay molds are needed. A small 3-legged ding vessel provides a simple example.
The model is made before the mold. The decorative patterns are drawn on the molds. After drying and firing, the bronze is cast.
Right. The space between the core and the outer mold defines the thickness of the finished ding. Right? Right. That's where we cast the metal. The large and complex sculptures at Sanxingdui were assembled from separate pieces, but each piece was made in the same way. Since the shapes of those parts were relatively simple, they rarely used more than 3 outer mold sections. That made it possible to cast them quite thin.
The complexity and refinement of Sanxingdui bronzes reflect the immense wealth that sustained such advanced technology. Artifacts unearthed from the 8 pits enabled archaeologists to reconstruct aspects of ancient Shu life. Built beside waterways, the city displayed remarkable prosperity. The discovery of another major site, several dozen kilometers away, is revealing even more about the scale and power of the ancient Shu. Ran Honglin has led numerous excavations around Chengdu. His research at the Sanxingdui ruins site produced a major discovery.
This is the eastern city wall of Sanxingdui. It follows a north to south alignment. We're facing south right now. The eastern part is the best preserved of the Sanxingdui city wall. Stretching nearly 1 kilometer, we can see that the wall is very thick. Its top is almost 30 meters wide. To our left is the area outside the city, while the area inside the city wall is on the right. Excavations here have uncovered remains from every phase of Sanxingdui.
These rammed earth walls were designed less for defense against enemies than for protection from recurring floods. Archaeologists found drainage channels at the wall's base, less than a kilometer from the sacrificial pits. Another section of the wall was excavated and preserved beneath a dome. Beneath its modest appearance is the engineering, far more advanced than one might expect. Zhan Honglin has long studied the construction techniques of the massive city wall.
Yue Liangwan Wall dates back about 3,600 years from its construction and artifacts found nearby. This here is a cross-section. The wall was entirely made of earth. We can see layers of sandy soil, which came from river deposits. Below that, another layer. This layer used different material. It is actually clay. It's a common local soil in the Sichuan Basin. You can see the layers here, right? It's easy to tell that different soils were stacked together, layer by layer, to build the wall. The combination of these two kinds of soil in building the wall was intentional. In this way, the two materials helped ensure the wall's long-term stability.
It is estimated that Sanxingdui's defensive walls extended for over 10 kilometers and enclosed 3.6 square kilometers. It was a huge city back then, among the largest ones in Asia. Young archaeologist Shi Danyang synthesized research on the urban layout from the palace area to workshops.
The map we're looking at, based on satellite imagery, shows the plan of the Sanxingdui site. We use different colors to represent different elevation levels. The darkest areas here are actually the city walls, which rise above the ground. The walls, the east wall, Yue Liangwan west walls, stand about 5 meters higher, and the highest area is the northern terrace, the core zone of Sanxingdui. Area, Changguanshan, marks the area where the palace district once stood. There's a man-made earthen platform. The platform covers roughly 8,000 square meters.
Once again, the Sanxingdui people showed remarkable engineering skills. They raised nearly 1 hectare of land in the north by several meters, protecting it from floods and transforming it into a center of power. Here, archaeologists found the foundations of large buildings.
The photo we're looking at shows our excavation, currently underway at Qingguanshan. These are the foundations of a large building. The areas with burned soil and pebbles likely mark column bases. It was divided into many rooms, and the entire building covered quite a large area, so it might be the palace area.
The presence of a palace confirmed social stratification within Sanxingdui. Other large architectural remains nearby prove Sanxingdui's status as the ancient Shu's economic and political center. Sanxingdui's significance is undeniable. Exquisite sculptures, magnificent architecture, and immense wealth reveal a flourishing civilization, distinct from that of the Central Plains. However, the key mystery still remains. Why did the ancient Shu people dig these deep pits? To bury the kingdom's most treasured ritual objects?
Given the national strength of the ancient Shu at the time, these sacrificial pits ultimately contained the ancient Shu's most valuable and most important resources of all. It was all in 6 pits. We can now say with reasonable certainty that these 6 sacrificial pits date to the final days of Sanxingdui as the capital.
After being broken and burned, the artifacts were buried beneath the earth. In a certain sense, these pits buried Sanxingdui itself. Dating to around 3,000 years ago, they mark the end of Sanxingdui's role as a capital. Yet archaeologists have never encountered a civilization that voluntarily buried its most prized treasures. What on earth happened? In this lost chapter of history, did the Sanxingdui people abandon the city willingly, Or were they forced to leave? A new discovery, less than 50 kilometers away, has offered a crucial clue for archaeologists. On February 8, 2001, a Jinsha construction site on the outskirts of Chengdu revealed a city that had been buried for over 3 millennia. Early explorations showed that the Jinsha site covers about 5 square kilometers. It has major sacrificial areas, building foundations, residential areas, and cemeteries. It yielded tens of thousands of artifacts. The sun-bird gold ornament that inspired the emblem of China's cultural heritage was unearthed here. The site was immediately secured, and rescue excavations began. More than 100 excavation grids were laid out for systematic excavation. The earliest findings were already astonishing. Dozens of archaeologists were fully engaged. Wang Fang, deputy director of Jinsha Museum, has been involved since the very beginning.
We found that the city had clearly defined functional areas. A river divided it into northern and southern parts. The north was residential areas, palaces, cemeteries, and possibly craft workshop areas. The southern section of the site was mainly used as a place for ritual activities.
In its glory, Jinsha shared striking similarities with Sanxingdui. Both cities were aligned northeast-southwest. The Jinsha site covered 5 square kilometers. Despite having no city walls, every detail shows it functioned as a capital.
We're standing in a sacrificial area of the Jinsha site from 3,000 years ago. Now, we are standing at sacrificial site number 8. Take a look. It's actually small and shallow, about 30 centimeters, but more than 380 artifacts were excavated from here. Among them was Jinsha's best-known find, the gold mask.
64 sacrificial pits were found at Jinsha. These pits are now carefully preserved within a grand exhibition hall. Archaeologist Zhu Zhongyi notes that a gold mask from one of the pits closely resembles those gold artifacts unearthed at Sanxingdui in both style and craftsmanship. This strongly suggests a close relationship between the two places.
Here's something intriguing at Jinsha. A gold crown bears almost the same symbols as those on the artifacts from Sanxingdui. We can see a bird, a fish, and an arrow. That suggests the two places belong to the same cultural system.
Archaeologists confirmed that the Jinsha site emerged around 3,400 years ago, yet after roughly 300 years, its history took a sudden turn.
Around 3,000 years ago, huge quantities of ivory, gold, bronzes, and jade suddenly appeared here at the Jinsha site. That may reflect a large-scale migration of people to Jinsha, leading to the rise of a new political, economic, cultural, and religious center. Thus, a new capital was formed.
The pits at Jinsha differ markedly from those at Sanxingdui. Most of them are shallower and smaller. Artifacts from Jinsha were buried, intact rather than broken or burned. They seem to be set aside for later use. In addition, Jinsha shows none of the orderly burial layers or significant ash deposits as those at Sanxingdui.
What we see buried at Jinsha today wasn't necessarily underground back then. Some of them were put on the ground. Some of these objects were just stored in pits and then would be taken out again later for sacrificial rituals. That's not the case at Sanxingdui. Once these objects had been buried, they were never meant to be used again.
Despite sharing the same label, the pits at Sanxingdui and Jinsha embody very different ideas. Yet the two sites still share many similarities, especially their extensive use of gold, which was rare in China at the time. Jinsha and Sanxingdui valued gold far more highly than other Bronze Age societies in China. Wang Shangyu, an expert in the history of gold, notes that the ancient Shu's fascination with gold was comparable to that of contemporary Egypt or Greece.
They found roughly 1,000 gold wares from Sanxingdui. Jinsha has over 200 pieces. Together, they reveal the distinctive significance of gold in ancient Shu society at the time.
Wang found that the gold from both sites likely originated from the northern Sichuan grasslands. It is a gold-silver alloy with a yellowish hue.
Scholars found that some gold pieces were attached directly to bronzes. Some scholars say the gold could be attached to some wooden objects. That's because they are thin. On the back of some Sanxingdui gold masks, we've found traces of adhesive materials, like lacquer and lime, which were used to attach them to the original bronze heads.
The exquisite gold masks were made of extremely thin gold sheets and could not stand alone. They were mainly used to cover bronze sculptures to amplify their visual brilliance.
Over 3 millennia ago, these bronze heads would have had a very different color and overall appearance compared to what we see now. In China, bronze was known as an auspicious metal. Back at the time, it actually had a golden yellow hue. Many heads and gold masks at Sanxingdui still preserve black pigment on the eyebrows and some red traces around the lips. The overall effect would have been dramatic. It looked nothing like from its appearance today.
Archaeologists and historians are curious. Why did the ancient Shu people apply precious gold to bronze wares of a similar color? Did this carry a deeper meaning?
The people of Sanxingdui and Jinsha were able to make a connection between the physical property of gold, its inherent brilliance, with the radiance of the sun and the power of light.
Some scholars see bronze, gold, and the sun as central to the Sanxingdui cultural system.
From those artifacts found at the Sanxingdui pits, we can find that they had a strong and obvious tradition of worshiping the sun god. Yet, sun worship was a common tradition shared by many different peoples across cultures, particularly those dependent on farming. The sun gives growing crops the light they need to thrive, making both spring sowing and autumn harvests possible.
Among the gold artifacts from Jinsha, the most striking one is a disc representing the sun. It bears 12 rays and 4 birds circling its rim.
It has 2 rings of decorative patterns, one inner and one outer. The inner ring shows 12 rays turning clockwise. The outer ring features 4 birds flying counterclockwise. Such decorations reflect the balance of yin and yang.
Near where the sun and immortal bird's gold ornament was found, archaeologists discovered a square foundation with 9 post holes within the sacrificial area. Its unusual design strongly suggests a sacred function.
Inside those post holes lay many objects connected to ritual activity, which clearly shows that this was not an ordinary building.
Astronomical studies show that this 9-pillared shrine aligns perfectly with the sun's path on the winter solstice, confirming the central role of sun worship in the ancient Shu culture.
The evidence for sun worship at Sanxingdui is also very strong and clear. Large bronze sun wheels were found there.
6 large bronze sun wheels of the same form were unearthed at Sanxingdui. They were regarded as symbols of the sun. The discoveries at Jinsha have deepened our understanding of the Sanxingdui belief system. Like many agricultural societies, Sanxingdui centered its spiritual beliefs on sun worship. In the cosmology of ancient peoples, the sacred tree, bridging heaven and earth, was paramount.
Tall trees were seen as cosmic trees. They were also called sun trees. Ancient Persian imagery shows kings honoring the cosmic tree. Comparable sun trees can be found in Egypt as well. These towering trees often came to symbolize the exact sunlit center of the earth. It was a common notion. So many cultures believed they had their own sun trees and cosmic trees. Sanxingdui was no exception.
The bronze trees, unearthed at Sanxingdui, are seen as masterpieces of imagination. Their branches are adorned with delicate blossoms and lifelike birds.
Why are there so many birds? Because birds can ascend into the sky. Why are there wings on Chinese dragons? Because they hope those dragons could fly to heaven. These are tied to ancient Chinese ritual beliefs, where humans, gods, and heaven were meant to be connected. This belief that sacred creatures could fly to heaven is clearly associated with that.
Birds were messengers between humans and deities. In the Central Plains, Chinese dragons fulfilled much the same role.
The dragon is a figure found in both Chinese culture and Western traditions, tied to the heavens. It is a divine creature that can soar into the sky.
In her study of ancient Chinese cosmology, Rawson offers insight into early Chinese beliefs.
I'm pretty sure these images represent some form of their beliefs about the world. And some people call those a cosmology, but I would call it their view of how the universe works. They have a sense in what keeps the universe moving and how it works. And these animals, or these strange creatures, are part of that.
These animal images were not mere decoration back then. They had sacred qualities. Such qualities were very closely and directly associated with assisting shamans.
Some experts believe Sanxingdui's golden age ended abruptly around 1200 BCE. A collapse of belief may explain the destruction of thousands of ritual objects and the creation of these sacrificial pits. Within the pit's 3 layers of backfill, the ash layer above the ivory may hold key evidence about what happened to Sanxingdui. Yan Shui of Chengdu Institute of Cultural Relics and Archaeology studies the remains.
We're having an initial sorting of the flotation samples, recovered through wet screening. We need to carefully pick out all the charcoal and remains. What we've picked out here is a fragment that flaked off from a tusk after it was burned. It displays the same blackish color. This is also a small fragment of a tusk. This is a pottery shard.
Yen identifies the species of the charred wood fragments. Among more than 2,000 samples analyzed, several plants stand out. Sanxingdui's ash deposits consist mainly of burned bamboo, mixed with Nanmu wood.
I'll split this sample open and see what species it is. We can see that it has turned black. These bouquet-like patterns, you can see here, are vascular bundles, unique to bamboo. By examining these bundle patterns, we can tell that the material is bamboo. Bamboo accounts for more than 86% of all the charcoal. Besides, we also found Phoebe and Chinese pistake. Phoebe makes up about 7 or 8% of the remaining samples. Chinese pistake accounts for only a little, just over 1%.
The ashes in the pits at Sanxingdui are mainly charred bamboo mixed with Nanmu. Nanmu, a prized hardwood, widely used in important buildings, was also burned. Why was that? Archaeologists were very puzzled to find large quantities of burned soil in pit number 8. The same phenomenon also appeared in several other pits later. Experts suspected the burned soil blocks might be pieces of fire-damaged walls. But why were they buried in the sacrificial pits in the first place?
Actually, we found burned soil in both pit number 8 as well as in pit number 4, based on evidence from Sanxingdui and archaeological sites across China. These burned soil blocks are usually the broken fragments left behind of old building walls.
Archaeologists now believe that an important building was burned before the ritual objects were buried. So, what on earth triggered this abrupt collapse?
After the pits appeared, Sanxingdui declined very quickly. It's more likely that an outside invasion brought about its downfall. Where exactly might that enemy have come from? Central Plains are the most likely source. The main possibilities are the Shang and the Zhou.
Yet the key mystery still remains unsolved.
Because the pits date roughly to the exact same historical moment when the Zhou dynasty overthrew the Shang dynasty.
Many theories have emerged. Was it internal unrest or external invasion? Yet the key mystery still remains unsolved. Who buried these sculptures? Some believe only the Sanxingdui people themselves could organize such a systematic and orderly burial. Professor Sun Hua has studied Sanxingdui rituals for nearly 40 years. He seeks to restore the sculptures' original positions before the burial. New discoveries allow him to revisit the original scene. He believes the ritual objects were burned outside the pits, most likely inside a temple at Sanxingdui.
My guess is that the temple belonging to the Sanxingdui people caught fire for some reason. What exactly caused that is an entirely different question.
All the ritual objects from the temple, together with at least some of the building remains, were buried in several sacrificial pits, including pits number 2, 3, 7, and 8.
We know exactly which objects came from each pit and where each item may have stood inside the temple.
The artifacts from pit number 2 correspond to the temple's most sacred core area. They include the large protruding eye mask, the massive sacred tree, multiple solar symbols, bronze heads, and the bronze standing figure representing the supreme leader. All are closely linked to sun worship.
Once we've identified the deity figure, the next step is to identify the most important ritual objects that had been placed before it.
The most striking artifacts in this pit are 3 complex sculptures depicting ritual scenes. The bowls on top were used to hold offerings for the gods. The altars likely stood beside the deity figures. Meanwhile, the objects in pit number 8 were intended to facilitate human-deity communication, including dozens of human heads that used to be inside the temple.
We think these bronze faces, large and small, represent neither humans nor deities. They are something special. Like ancestors, the dead, they are what we might call spirits.
Today, the key artifacts from pits number 2, 3, and 8, objects closely tied to the burned temple, have been restored to their original positions. Together, they create a striking picture of sun worship at the ancient Sanxingdui. However, many questions about its deeper meaning remain unanswered. After the sacred objects were destroyed and buried, Sanxingdui ceased to be the capital of the ancient Shu. Some residents brought their beliefs and skills to Jinsha. Thus, Jinsha quickly rose and became a new cultural center of the Chengdu Plain. Its influence soon spread outward, ushering in another period of rapid population growth in the ancient Shu kingdom, post-Sanxingdui. As one of the largest, richest, and highest-ranking archaeological sites known in southwestern China then, Jinsha is believed to have served between 1200 and 600 BCE as another political, economic, religious, and cultural center of the ancient Shu kingdom. The Jinsha site is like a gift left behind by the ancient Shu. It offers us a window into the lives of the ancient Shu people. This enormous tree root site covers 100 square meters and lies beside an ancient river channel at the Jinsha site. Yan Shui of the Chengdu Institute of Cultural Relics and Archaeology is studying it.
Identification shows that these ancient trees were all bishopwood trees. Bishopwood is a typical riverbank tree. It also has a very elegant appearance. In fall, they turned reddish-yellow, making it a beautiful landscape tree.
Drawing on the artifacts unearthed at Jinsha, archaeologists reconstructed the look of ancient Jinsha. This capital city stood on a natural rise near the river. The river flowed through it, providing convenient transportation and abundant resources. People here lived on farming, fishing, and hunting. In this prosperous kingdom, craft production evolved into a specialized trade. Freed from heavy manual labor, craftsmen could produce an abundance of exquisite objects. Yet why did such a flourishing city suddenly vanish from history? This fallen tree was excavated at the Jinsha site. Conservation staff are checking root moisture to assess their condition and take timely measures. Researchers hope to find clues to Jinsha's decline from them.
Based on how this bishopwood was found deposited, we think it once grew along the river bank. After a flood, it was swept into the river channel. Its presence also shows that flooding is a recurring hazard on the Chengdu Plain. It may have been one of the region's common natural disasters throughout history.
Right now, although the exact causes behind the decline of Sanxingdui and Jinsha remain uncertain, there is no doubt that they are the peaks of the ancient Shu. The ancient Shu was once a powerful kingdom, whose territory extended across much of today's southwestern China. Open and inclusive, it absorbed influences from many directions. When ancient Shu people crossed mountains, ventured into unknown lands, and navigated dangerous terrain to find a habitat, no one could imagine that their descendants would create such a brilliant civilization in a basin encircled by mountains. Today, the treasures of Sanxingdui are displayed in a magnificent new museum. Countless visitors come to explore this unique branch of Chinese civilization. For archaeologists like Lei Yi, who have devoted their lives to studying Sanxingdui, it's a source of immense pride.
After university, I came to Sanxingdui in 1984 to join the excavations. It's been a tremendous honor and a blessing. Sanxingdui holds a truly unique place, not only in China, but also in the broader history of world civilization.
Millennia ago, deep within the Sichuan Basin, an extraordinary civilization made a short yet brilliant appearance. The people expressed their beliefs through bronzes, gold and jade, and then intentionally destroyed and buried them forever.
Rebuilding or recollecting Sanxingdui has been done with a huge amount of energy, but that's because they're very keen to illustrate the complexity and extraordinary activity of their past, and they're right to do so.
The discoveries at Sanxingdui and Jinsha lit history like a brilliant flash of light, drawing attention once more to the ancient Shu, a civilization that had been lost for ages. The strikingly shaped and superbly crafted bronzes, together with fine gold and jade artifacts, seem to speak to us across millennia, conveying to us the glory and prosperity of the ancient Shu. Archaeologists have worked tirelessly to decipher the secrets of this great civilization. Not a single tiny clue was missed. From pottery fragments to faint patterns, every detail was meticulously studied. Their interpretations of these discoveries reveal a profound truth. Our civilization's roots are far deeper and more diverse than once thought. It's like a tree with firm roots and lush leaves. Each of its branches holds immense, unique cultural values, living together in harmony and growing ever more prosperous.